Should anyone have a question, feel free to raise your hand. I can stop a microphone.
No, I actually thought your presentation was quite interesting and bringing up this concept of injustice and justice, but in terms of understanding information, I would say that I would question whether or not AI can give you a perception of justice or injustice. I would say that this is something that humans experience, so can you really direct preference in AI if, especially when you're talking about injustices or justices?
Great question.
So myself, I would be a little bit skeptical about the capacity nowadays of AI of solving the problems of something being moral or immoral, something being just or not. The problem is that the contemporary AI, so the AI that is based on machine learning technologies, is as good as the data it receives for the training for the learning, just for the model training, to put it technologically. However, if we observe, for example, the problems with ethical behavior of AI, or so-called problems of biased AI, AI that is not able to recognize face of iPhone users in China, which was very broadly discussed the time of premiere of the first iPhone with the Face ID technology implemented within. There is always a problem that when we observe an ethical behavior of an AI that is trained on the data and information that we provide to the system, is actually that we are learning something about ourselves. Ourselves, the society, those who have generated the data that we later on use for AI training. Just to give you maybe one more example, there was this very widely discussed situation at the very beginning of video or image processing, when the AI was trained using the data set of representations or pictures of men and women that were tagged, so labeled. Yeah, so the AI received a picture of representing women, right, and it was labeled women, men, women, and so on. Well, after going through 10,000 of pictures like that and building the associations with the category that women put on top of it, yeah, so this represents a man, this represents a woman, and so on, the AI at some point in time, one of the instances, of course, was able to identify the gender of a person represented in the picture, not by the primary sexual traits and characteristics that are physical, that are physiological or biological, but, for example, based on the entourage or the scene in which that person was placed. So, for example, if you see a person that holds a bag or that holds a file or a file of documents or works on a computer, it's a man. But if you see the same, if you see another something with this a person, a human being in general, but is taking care of children or is represented in a scenario of a kitchen or household, it turned out that it is obviously 99.5 certainty of my prediction that is of the system prediction that is the woman, obviously. That's a woman, obviously. So we call that actually a biased AI. Yeah? But what the fact that the AI system did, it has discovered the concept of gender, of cultural gender. Yeah? Because it has learned that there are certain attributes that are not biological, not physiological, and still they are good predictors to identify the gender of the person represented in the picture. And so, as good as the data are, as good as our examples are, as moral and just the AI will be.
But is it even okay to put ethics and ethical in AI in the same sentence? does it even match to our current standards of perception of ethics? Mike, care to comment?
No, not very much. Maybe these are different concepts.
I would say so as well. But I found it very interesting to see how we moved from your presentation initially, from the visual presentation, to what really it means to include the analysis of system 0, system 1, and system 2 in real life, in real context. So tell me, can we even see applications of AI in the research that you're doing today, Florian?
Yes, we do. For example, with the eye tracking, we are partnering with a company in Berlin which is producing very, very good eye tracking devices. Funny enough, also I think this touches upon the question of ethics, or maybe what you touched upon, the bias. What we're having a lot of problems with the eye tracking devices is actually cultural differences. For example, Asian users, users with darker skin colors, the algorithms just have difficulties seeing the pupil movement. So what is actually funny is that without any wanting maybe in the background, again here the technology is kind of culturally primed in the sense that it's tested with European-centered users in the first time, and then now we actually need to enable it to work with other users. So that's very interesting. But yes, I would say, for example, you mentioned earlier in the beginning the System 0 approach. The eye tracking devices we're using, they're also based on algorithms, they're based on how the pupil is moving, and they're detecting changes in the movement. And of course, it's algorithms, I guess. It's a form of, how to say that, it's an extension of a tool we can use to understand participants and users and what they see. But of course, if you use technology as a middle thing in between to understand people, there will always be issues with it, I think. So it's touching on what you said, I found it very interesting. Also, I was thinking about the topic of this discussion today, and in the morning I thought, actually, how emotionally intelligent do we want machines to be? That was my question today. And it's coming because last week I was at a conference and there was a talk about Google, and it was very interesting for me that apparently Google are working on their communication now because they don't want a lot of users to understand how much they actually know about us already, because that's creepy. We're creeped out by that. And I think technology brings, we're quite far. Probably you know that we're not so far in some steps because the AI is not so good yet, but sometimes we're also already creeped out by technology and how good it is. That's something I was thinking about today, maybe yeah, about that these two.
I think so too. It's a paradox. It's comfort, at the same time it's discomfort. We have support from technology in providing inputs and ads and to images, but the sheer fact that they know what we want to consume is somewhat discomforting. But in your research work and how Iceberg is performing user research, AI is only supporting through the technology, right? The human factor, the inability to predict any human behavior through AI requires you to still have a human person, human as part of the research.
Michael, yes, you would probably say yes as I do, because sometimes in your presentations you have an example of AI-generated heat maps on stimuli, and what we're seeing is that they, until now, still completely differ of heat maps we're doing with our eye tracking. Maybe for the people that don't know what heat maps are, it's a visual representation of where participants looked at, and you always have a good example of an AI-generated heat map, and it's sometimes they're already good, but sometimes they're very off compared to what we measure with real eye tracking, where users really look at. So, as you said, perfectly fine in our case, until now, AI is the support, an extended arm we're using to measure what we want to use. But as of now, I sincerely doubt that this could fully be replaced with the AI as of now, because as you said, AI is just as good as the data we feed into it. And we humans are very complex. There's always a moment of surprise, there's always a moment of uncertainty, because sometimes we don't act as very rational agents, but we are very irrational when it comes to attending a stimuli, to visual attention, to understanding something, and Matthias, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're not there at all. I completely understand it. The question of understanding, what does it mean for the AI to understand that, well, we are such and such, or we have this and that emotional learning, this and that emotional state at the moment. This is a very, very wide and complex question, I'd say, because the question is, what actually does it mean to understand our emotional state? There are many different definitions of what emotion is. Some people will say, okay, this is something about understanding positive or negative aspect of the situation we participate. Sometimes it is a manner to learn about something called the environment, sometimes it is just it is a disposition that if someone is happy, for example, it is the person or it's something is in a disposition to react in a certain way if the person is in a certain circumstances. Yeah. So these differences need still to be investigated. But to pick one like a very I'd say like a very convincing example how complex the situation is that the very let's say high first page revelations about the AI becoming conscious or becoming emotional or at least sentient. They are always put in a context of NLP, so natural language processing. And this is the case I have referred to, the AI engineer is discussing the problem of emotions, of sentiments with AI is very, very favorable, I'd say, and it's like a very, very privileged context because the AI can refer to the questions and the incentives in the dialogue given by the human interlocutor because they are all clearly stated by the medium of language. And if we observe all the questions or the discussions with AI engineer and AI, are you social? Yeah, I like this talk. I like to be among friends. And are you sad sometimes? Yeah, I'm sad when I cannot speak to my friends. And I'm not involved in engaged in a discussion or dialogue or conversation for a while. My question would be, right, but what do we expect actually from AI models and AI systems that are designed to be the background or the backbone of chatbots? Or like this one I have referred to, like language model for dialogic applications. So can we expect that the AI is really has certain emotional intelligence if it is designed to talk? At some point in time, it turns out that after having 3,000 conversations with AI engineers, very, very sophisticated, speaking like a high English AI, conversational AI system, will become mute, or will stop talking, or will be less talkative, or not talkative at all, then I believe we have reached the level where the AI systems are really emotional. Other way around, if you train something to do the chit-chat, then please don't expect that it will be, oh, I don't like people, but I will spend another 3 hours talking with you about my preferences when it comes to social settings. Yeah. So this is really something, let's say, self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mateusz, it might be a naive perspective, but I perceive emotions depicted by AI as a way of a combined language for humans. We expect and require some sort of emotional load in communication when we hear something, read something. And maybe these made-up emotions generated by AI are a way of creating the comfort zone for us, don't you think?
Okay, well, maybe just one sentence. Yes, no. I do remember one of series. Yeah, when Dexter had a problem, alright, okay, not everything is fine with me. I'm a little bit sociopath, I'm a little bit of psychopath. To be honest, I don't know what people think or feel or have in mind when they're smiling or laughing or whatever, but when they do, I do this and this and that. And this is what actually we're training our artificial intelligence, conversational intelligence systems to do. Yeah, so yeah, I like when the system is smiling to me, but every single time when I recognize that this could be a texter, you know, having this sophisticated societal mimics implemented, I'm not that happy anymore. Yeah, so it's yeah. So it's a twofold thing. Yeah.
So it's only comforting when we do not know who we talk to. Once it becomes clear it's not a human on the other end of the line, then the emotions create a sense of discomfort. That's what you're trying to say.
Yes, that's yeah, a very nice little for yeah. So yeah, I agree.
Interesting.
Something that yeah.
Pardon?
I think Sally has a question.
No, I would also say that, like, doesn't that also require us humans to understand our own emotions, to give the data, which we don't understand?
It's too complicated.
Yeah.
And we're not always aware of what we're feeling when we said it, but I just wanted to say the same, because you asked me about our research process, and I was thinking, because we're not thinking, or at least I'm not thinking about AI on a daily basis in my job. But I think what you said, Matthias, was very good, that basically we need to be aware of that AI is still produced by us, and it's based on the data we feed to it, right? And you asked me about the research process, and when I'm thinking, okay, in the example I gave earlier for the Nike ad, if we want an AI to understand how I perceive and how I react to a Nike commercial, what kind of data would we actually need to give the AI to be able to understand that? A lot, right? I just realized that I'm wearing Nike shoes, and I thought about the Nike ad, and then I thought, okay, what do I need to tell the AI to understand, to make it understand that yes, I like Nike? All my previous experiences with the brand, right? That I had a lot of contact with the brand, that I like, I don't know, I like hip hop, so I'm seeing a lot of Nike shoes in hip hop videos probably. When I bought Nike shoes for the last time, so will I be able to, or will I be likely to buy Nike shoes the next time as well? Those will be so much data points to understand something that's very complicated, right? And I don't think AI is there yet. And then also, for example, you asked me about the system zero eye tracking, for example. Say I'm having a very stressful day and I'm just, as many people do, browsing through Instagram while I'm on the subway or the bus going to work. How much attention will I have to the ad? Very little, because I'm stressed out and I'm just scrolling through it. But when I'm at home on a Sunday morning and I'm kind of relaxed, I'm going through it, reading everything, maybe I will spend more attention to the ad, right? And that's something I couldn't know before really telling it, actually, hey, right now I'm relaxed, right now I'm very stressed out. So I don't think, from my perspective as a researcher at our company, I think it will take a lot of time to understand the complexity of human behavior and perception and understanding what appeals to us and what doesn't.
Fascinating.
Yes, sir.
There's a question. Oh, there's a question.
Matthias, thanks for your explanations, but I think besides the emotion part, what are the AI algorithms also like is the motivation. They don't understand the motivation. For example, if I look now at this bottle here, I may do so because I'm maybe thirsty, but they don't know. So when they analyze the eye tracking, what is the emotion of the person looking at something? And also, so from your text analysis, the system doesn't know what my intention or motivation is to start this conversation. Maybe I just want to learn something, or I just want to chat, or maybe I want to manipulate you. What is your view on this? How far will this be possible?
Okay, so I think that we can distinguish or differentiate between the say standard use of language, standard use of expression, and those uses of language that are non-standard, that can be considered corner cases, and you name it, irony, being I know, trying to lie, for example, trying to mislead someone, and so on and so on. So in some cases, we are using language with different intention or with different rhetorical approach, and so on and so on. And when we understand the nature of the irony as humans, irony of life, of provocation, for example. Bring all the instruments of rhetoric from Aristotle to 21st century literary studies. Then you will see, of course, that there's a lot to be learned about that. But I think that in general, this is something that the AI sooner or later will, even the narrow AI, will be able to understand, because the web, even in the transcript of this conversation I've shown, that there's later on a very, very nice example of how the AI is making analogies, of how it tries to clarify or elucidate certain allegoric statements, and metaphors, or being all metaphors. So this is something that even the narrow AI is eager to achieve, and it's absolute really. But the other approach is that when we think of linguistic experience in general, we need to remember that this always, in the context of how we humans are dealing with words on an everyday basis, this is not something isolated like a conversation in this context. Just text, textual reply, and so on and so on. And this is what I think, that when the data, we have a complete account of, more sophisticated or more complex and more complete account of what the linguistic experience is in terms of interacting and going through the conversation, is something that the data, to understand that and to train more sophisticated models, and maybe pave the way to general AI, is something that you guys actually do, and we are helping you to do as DAC.digital. So bring these three systems together. Make sure what the person is looking at, understand its implicit, spontaneous response, because I have smiled, I have winked, whatever, I start sweating, and then have a look at the explicit statements, so the declarative attitude of a person towards the object, towards the product, or the ad. And then if you bring these three things together, we're on some demographics and maybe some, usability information of, like 2 picoseconds here on the slide because you're in a hurry, but then on Sunday morning you have like 2 milliseconds on a picture there because you have 5 minutes of free time to use. Actually, not the best idea, by the way. Talking to myself also. Then you have a complete bunch of data. You can and start playing with the cross references and looking if there are more sophisticated correlations than simply looking at something interesting or discussed. So this is the thing that you guys are actually bringing data together, and fingers crossed, because these three systems will be working together to provide more clear and complete account of what we're doing with topic.
And when analyzing human reactions to ads, to external impulses, do you see a discrepancy or divergence between implicit reactions and explicit voicing of opinions? And what is more important? And what do you use it for? What do you create with this information that an explicit feedback is different than an implicit one?
Yes, and we've had a very nice example of that. We did a study for Procter & Gamble in May, and they were really interested in that topic. So what we had participants, actually moms, so users of Pampers, surfing on the web for half an hour, doing whatever they wanted to do in the UK and in the US. And then we had eye tracking, so we actually saw what they paid attention to and what they didn't pay attention to. And after that, we also had an interview with them for half an hour, talking about what they saw, what caught their attention. And to answer your first question, I don't think you can weigh the one over the other, because it's both interacting, right? So when I'm seeing something, it definitely does something to me, because I'm perceiving it, I'm paying attention to it. But maybe I'm thinking, oh, another ad, I'll just skip it. It also means something, right? So it's a combination of both. But many, many times there are a lot of discrepancies, as you said, between them. So, for example, many participants said, yeah, of course, I'm understanding that these are ads and companies want to talk to me, and sometimes it's getting on my nerves, so I skip them. But then they also say, yeah, but in the end, most of the time, something stays with me. Maybe it's the music that's been used, or sometimes, for example, in that moment, there was a huge campaign for, do you know Takeaway? Verhandlung on the German market, and it was with Katy Perry, and many people mentioned Katy Perry, and I was surprised, wow, it really sticks with people, right? And they were like, yeah, I know it's an ad, I don't use that, but man, that song from Katy Perry, it's still stuck in my head, you know? So it does something with them, and they said, yeah, of course, it's an ad, it's getting on my nerves, but actually I like the music, and sometimes it's nice, so it's a combination of the both. And also, we've done, it was very interesting, a colleague of mine did a presentation on that last week. We did a study that was very special for us too, with another company in Germany, and we invited participants to go to, it's called Alltagsstudio in German. It's a replication of a living room with a TV, and participants were asked to just watch TV. And then the company we worked together with on this one, they had interviews, and they asked participants to look at the footage of them watching TV and then commenting it. And it was very, very interesting that many participants said, oh, I thought I didn't look at the ads, but I did it, right? Of course, you're not aware of that, and that's why we're studying it, because you're not paying attention to how you're paying attention all the time. You're not self-reflective all the time. Obviously, there's a power in it. There's still a power in ads. There's a power in communication and websites, obviously. Many times we're not aware of it, and especially the responses are getting funny when participants are seeing how they reacted to something, and then when they're confronted with their behavior, because our explicit or implicit reaction towards things can be very different to what we're saying or doing, right? So,
sounds like a great use case for AI as well, right? To analyze movie of a person doing something and taking information from that. Because in the end, for your customers, for brands, those quantifiable data points are relevant. So if you can take that information from analysis performed automatically, it seems like a no-brainer to me.
yeah, exactly. And sometimes it can be quite detailed, what, for example, our clients or customers are really happy with, and sometimes it can be very, very basic. For example, Michael, you know this, you do this a lot in our presentations, the meta-analysis of how much attention we're paying to ads, that on average it can be below 2 seconds. And many clients are like, oh wow, our ad is only seen for 2 seconds on average. And then, for example, you see a lot of billboards on the streets when you're at a bus stop, and it's trying to tell you a story. Now I was telling people they can read one sentence at that time, and that's it. And you need to be aware of that, right? And but also, of course, you could put it to an AI in that sense. Okay, they are seeing this ad for 2 seconds, but they remember one sentence of it. So is that the most important sentence to use, and where to put it? There's a lot of things there.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Go ahead.
I found very interesting what you just shown the AI-generated painting or visual piece of art. Because I myself was trying to understand if there is, for example, a difference between trying. Okay, well, first of all, what's annoying me is that we always talk about the emotions in the context of language processing AIs, yeah, and not about in the context of video generating or image picture generating AIs. I could imagine, yeah, that okay, it's easy to talk about emotions with someone, but it's not that easy to say, for example, oh my god, the image generating AI system is now emotional. Why? Because I see these differences in the pictures it produces. Yeah. Can we say that the AI trained on Elon Bosch and Goya, or the military or cruelty representations and scenes are more drastic or aggressive in their art they produce? Or you cannot simply say that, well, after having the data set of by Goya, yeah, used to train AI, it went totally different. Yeah, so now it's a different artist. So, is it possible to observe something like that?
Why not? I mean, if you train it long enough, it probably will come up with something by itself. I haven't seen examples. I've just noticed that there's something going around on Instagram, for instance, where there's always one really spooky figure appearing in AI-generated images, and somebody picked up on it and discovered it. In every image, there's a human that's kind of like a zombie, and it's always appearing somewhere after tens of thousands of processing. I mean, I think basically, I think it only creates cliches in a way, or like, but the way we perceive it is also as a cliche, but this is something that's good because everybody understands cliches in a way. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's always the question if the AI can be creative, and maybe it can, I don't know, but then probably the artist will go somewhere else. I mean, the human artist will try to find another way to come up with paintings that or something that the AI can't. But yeah, I totally think it can come up with paintings. It's just, yeah, it's interesting if you would buy it then and think it's art and hang it into your living room or something, or have it in a museum. Because maybe, I think you always need the human biography behind the art. You kind of, it's not only about the painting, it's about there is this human that is actually doing something that's completely nonsense or doesn't make sense.
Imperfection, maybe. Human imperfection.
Yes, no, you can train the AI to make imperfect paintings or copy an artist's biography maybe, where he goes through stages, but somehow it's totally irrational to do art because it has no benefit, you know, you can't even live by it, you know, so why do it? So maybe that's one thing that stands in the way. So as long as we need this, as we need a human that's irrational, doing something irrational, then you wouldn't exhibit the AI in the museum, I guess.
I agree. As exciting as this discussion unfolds, we are bound by time and we'll be taking a short break.